And time now to take a brief look at some of the other stories making news in science this week with a science report. A new study claims being optimistic about stuff is actually good for your heart. The findings, reported in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, are based on numerous separate studies all showing that optimism and a feeling of purpose in life were associated with a lower risk of heart disease and stroke. They also found that optimistic patients were less likely to be smokers and more likely to exercise and eat healthy. The authors say intervention programs are available to strengthen psychological well-being. Activities like yoga and Tai Chi were shown to improve the health of heart failure patients. A new study warns the already endangered Australian fur seal population is shrinking. The findings, reported in the journal PLOS ONE, are based on a census of the annual Australian fur seal pup population. It found the first reduction since species-wide protection was implemented in 1975. Meanwhile, in a separate study of Australia's fragile ecosystem, world-renowned ecologist John Wolanarski from the Charles Darwin University has released a new book on the extinction of the Christmas Island pipistrelle. The book is both an obituary and an inquest into the extinction of this tiny Australian bat species, whose last individual died in 2009. Yet another Australian species now extinct. E-commerce stores worldwide have been infected with new payment skimming malware. The malicious software, called magnetocore.net, intercepts customer payments and sends it on to cybercriminals. The malware was able to infect websites using Magneto shopping cart software by successfully guessing the password used by the website's Magneto admin panel. Infected websites record all keystrokes from customers, capturing usernames, passwords, credit card information, and personal details. Online store owners are being advised to analyze back-end logs and look for any unusual administrator logins. And if you're an online shopper, double-check your accounts for any unauthorized transactions. Well, hot on the heels of last month's discovery of 3,200-year-old cheese in an Egyptian tomb, scientists have now found evidence of cheese making in Eastern Europe around 7,200 years ago. A report in the journal PLOS ONE claims archaeologists have found fatty acids on vessels unearthed in Croatian archaeological sites which were occupied between 6,000 and 4,800 BCE. And that suggests people were making cheese about 2,000 years earlier than previously thought. Researchers think cheese making may have helped farming communities expand into colder, more northern latitudes. Apple says neither its iPhones nor any third-party apps on them listen in without user consent. The tech giant gave assurances to the US Congress after the House Energy and Commerce Committee asked the company if its devices were invading users' privacy. That came following concerns raised about Siri's wake-up commands. Apple told lawmakers iPhones do not record audio while listening for a Siri command, and Siri doesn't share spoken words. Apple says it requires users to explicitly approve microphone access, and apps display a clear signal when they are listening. With more details, we're joined by Alex Zaharov-Reutt from IT Wire.
Well, that's without consent. I mean, Apple does things with your consent. Apple is listening and getting data from you if you agree to allow that to happen. And it's made very clear, and Apple is very strict on the way that it uses your data. But, of course, it is using your data, but, again, only with your consent. On the other hand, you have Google that has just been announced by an Associated Press report that testers were noticing that even when you explicitly turned off location history, Google and various apps were still capturing that history. And Google says, you can switch off web and history activity in your Google account, and you can switch things off. But you've got the Google side of the fence that sort of wants to take as much data as it can, whether really you give permission or not, and then use that in ways to enhance its services. Whereas Apple is more constrained; it has to get your permission. And even then, there's all sorts of things that it won't do, whereas Google will do them. And so in some ways, Apple has been a little bit behind in some of its efforts with artificial intelligence and Siri, whereas Google has just sort of been able to use your data as it has decided it wanted to, because you sort of ticked a box that said yes, but didn't really know what you were saying yes to. And look, the government is asking, well, who's listening? Well, Apple has said, well, we're not listening unless you give permission. But of course, if you give permission, then they're listening, but they're not using that against you or using that to identify you specifically. They talk about having that data being anonymized and randomized. And so, look, this battle will continue, and it's this touch-and-go area of how to advance technology but still keep privacy in check. And ultimately, we should strive to be the generation that ensures privacy is passed down to our future generations, as something to be sacred, as opposed to being something that we gave up and forgot about just so we can get a free.